The year 1992, the collapse of the Soviet Union led to Russia seeking to strengthen its influence in the lost regions. Transnistria, a small part of Moldova located on the eastern border of the country, became a launching pad for the new war. The Transnistria War went along a typical narrative that Kremlin would use to launch their military offensives, protecting the Russian population. The newly formed country of Moldova held no chance against a fully equipped Russian army. A ceasefire agreement was signed on 21 July 1992, allowing Russian forces to remain in Transnistria, creating a breakaway state which has since been lost in time and space, without being recognized by any single country in the world. The origins of the conflict date back to the first half of last century, when in 1924, the Moldavian Socialist Republic was proclaimed within the Ukrainian SSR. This was done for the purpose of achieving a clear goal of further expansion into Bessarabia, a Romanian region that for already a long time had been in the interest of Soviet leaders. After more than a decade, they fulfilled their wish, and Bessarabia was annexed in 1940. The region was combined with the Moldavian Socialist Republic. This was the final step of the operation that lasted for nearly 20 years. Combining the two regions into one served a necessary purpose for the Soviet regime, with demographics playing a key role. The population within Moldavian Socialist Republic was mainly Russian and Ukrainian, while the Bessarabia region was home to Romanians and Moldovans. Merging the two allowed the Soviets to spread their influence and gain the ability to play the card of protecting the Russian-speaking population in case that was needed. Decades went by, and both regions were getting deeper under the influence of the USSR. A special Moldovan language was artificially created for the purpose of controlling the public. The iron grip was getting tighter, with numerous instances of abuse and ethnic discrimination directed towards Moldovan people. However, in the 1980s, Mikhail Gorbachev's policies of the rebuild in the Soviet Union allowed political liberalization at a regional level. This led to the creation of various informal movements all over the country, and to a rise of nationalism within most Soviet republics. In the Moldavian SSR in particular, there was a significant resurgence of pro-Romanian nationalism among Moldovans. The most prominent of these movements was the Popular Front of Moldova. In early 1988, Popular Front demanded that the Soviet authorities declare Moldovan the only state language, return to the use of the Latin alphabet, and recognize the shared ethnic identity of Moldovans and Romanians. The more radical factions of the Popular Front espoused extreme anti-minority, ethnocentric and chauvinist positions, calling for minority populations, particularly the Slavs, to leave or be expelled from Moldova. They received huge opposition from the Russian-speaking population of Transnistria, which were in favor of remaining in the USSR. At the time, ethnic Moldovans there were outnumbered by the combined figure of Russians and Ukrainians. From September 1989, there were a series of protests in the region against the central government's ethnic policies. The protests developed into the formation of secessionist movements in Transnistria and one other region, Gagauzia, which initially sought autonomy within the Moldavian SSR. As the nationalist-dominated Moldavian Supreme Court outlawed these initiatives, the Gagauz Republic and Transnistria self-declared independence from Moldova. They announced their application to be reattached to the Soviet Union as independent federal republics on their own. Violence escalated when, in October 1990, the Popular Front called for volunteers to form armed militias to stop autonomy referendums. In response, volunteer militias were formed in Transnistria. In April 1990, nationalist mobs attacked ethnic Russian members of parliament, while the Moldovan police refused to intervene or restore order. In the interest of preserving a unified Moldavian SSR within the USSR and preventing the situation from escalating further, then Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev declared the Transnistria and Gagauzia proclamation to be lacking legal basis. He annulled it by presidential decree in December 1990. Nevertheless, no significant action was taken against Transnistria, and the new authorities were slowly able to regain control and develop separatist units. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, Moldova gained full independence, including the Transnistria region. However, The tension was as high as ever. The start of the Transnistria War in the 90s was backed by the Russian government, with Kremlin sending its forces through Ukraine to support the separatists. The fighting intensified throughout early 1992 when the former Soviet 14th Guards Army entered the conflict in its final stage, opening fire against Moldovan forces. Approximately 700 people were killed. Moldova has since then exercised no effective control or influence on Transnistrian authorities. A ceasefire agreement signed on 21 July 1992 has been held to the present day. Under the agreement, Russian forces were allowed to remain in the Transnistria region with a peacekeeping mission. After 3 years, it was agreed that Russian forces would withdraw from the territory, but they never did. Instead, they remained with the goal of keeping the region forcefully independent and maintaining control over public opinion. Since then, the region became self-governed, with its own political parties, documents, and currency, and yet not officially recognized by any other state. A region became frozen in time, with no economic or political development for almost 30 years. The lack of recognition has led to numerous challenges for Transnistria. Economically, the region has struggled to attract foreign investment and develop sustainable industries. With limited access to international markets, Transnistria has relied heavily on smuggling and illicit activities as a means of survival. This underground economy has allowed criminal organizations to flourish, engaging in activities such as drug and human trafficking, money laundering, and weapons smuggling. The power dynamics within Transnistria have also evolved over time. The initial leaders of the breakaway region were often individuals with ties to criminal networks from the 1990s. These individuals, once seen as rebel fighters against Moldova, eventually became puppets of their Russian superiors. As a result, power in Transnistria has been consolidated in the hands of a select few, often with questionable backgrounds and intentions. The international community, including the United Nations, has consistently reaffirmed its support for the territorial integrity and sovereignty of the Republic of Moldova, considering Transnistria as an integral part of the country. Efforts have been made to facilitate dialogue and build confidence between the parties involved, but a breakthrough remains elusive. The region still remains in a line of interest for Russia. The existence of such a puppet state brings a possibility of further expansion to Moldova and Romania. Transnistria and its government are a political force that allows the Kremlin to continue to influence the region. They keep the project on hold, not allowing it to break away from post-Soviet era, making it freeze in time. Years of diplomatic missions and negotiations have yet to help to resolve the conflict, with the future remaining uncertain. On the 15th of March 2022, the Council of Europe designated Moldova's breakaway region of Transnistria as a territory occupied by Russia. The Council of Europe officially stated that,
through its attitude and actions, the leadership of the Russian Federation poses an open menace to security in Europe, following a path which also includes the act of military aggression against Moldova and, respectively, the occupation of its Transnistrian region.
this was the first official recognition of Transnistria as an occupied territory.